I have Muyiwa Oni from Stanbic IBTC. Good morning.
Yes, Good morning, Kayode.
Good
Thank
morning.
you for having
Welcome to
me.
the show.
Thank you.
You know what to do, Lagos. To be a part of our show, reach out to us on WhatsApp at 0809 Also, send your messages to Twitter where it's smooth981FM with the hashtag BusinessExpress981. And finally, we're streaming live on YouTube. It's youtube.com/smooth981.
Excellent, excellent. Muyiwa Oni, of course, is the regional head, equities research, West Africa, global markets with Stanbic IBTC. I haven't been here in a while, so it's good to have you. Good to have you back, man.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Real quick, the market was down yesterday. Market, Airtel gained 10% when it listed on Tuesday.
Okay, that's good. At least they listed.
Right, they've listed, so they're there. And then yesterday, Airtel was one of the biggest losers. In fact, I think it was 40. It was 40 oil that was the top loser. 10%. I think Airtel dropped like 9.8 or something. Market is something else. Anyway, the market
I think
dropped.
the positive of that is that we have more options. So
Right.
I suppose the question we've had for a while, particularly when you talk to domestic fund managers and even foreign investors as well, is how shallow the market is,
Right.
limited options. And so I think with MTN, Airtel in the mix, then it increases that options and availability.
So we've had some depth, add some to
Yes,
the market.
I
And
think,
market
I
cap
think it
now.
helps ultimately. Yeah.
Right, the market cap now is at 14 trillion now, so it's going up. So good stuff. Okay, so let's start with the PMI, the Purchasing Managers Index. Of course, Stanbic has its own. You guys have your own PMI, your own survey that you carry out. So for the month of June, what did we see?
So we saw a stronger increase this time around. So I think for a while it's been positive, but the rate of increase has been much slower.
Okay.
And the PMI for me was the lowest we've had for about 23 months. So just showing that the level of improvement in the economy hasn't been as strong. But with this increase, even though you might argue that it's still in the margins, but it's still showing some element of positivity. And I think the question really has been, in spite of the positive PMI, economic growth is still weak. But I think ultimately what this is still showing is some element of progress. It's showing that there's been some increase in backlog. So from the survey, it shows that for some of the purchasing managers in there, they've had more demand, which you might say it's a positive. But I think maybe what makes this survey a bit different from actual GDP figures is that it's a survey from a yes or no answer.
Right.
And so it's difficult to really quantify how much. It's not necessarily saying my backlog has increased by 100%. Did you have a backlog?
Right.
Yes or no? And by the time you do an aggregate, it's showing that for most of the industry survey, there was still higher backlog, which more or less just showing some elements of demand, elements of increased activity, but still positive, heading in the right direction. But I suppose the bigger question is really is when we start seeing stronger pickup in the economy, which for now it's I guess there's still that question on fiscal authorities. They have to do much more.
Do their work. All right, so good stuff. So that's the Stanbic IBTC PMI for June, 54.8, up from 52.9 in May. Let me read a message from Rainmaker yesterday, because this is just going to touch on something that Kayode and Ayo mentioned in their news brief at the top of the hour, which when Business Express becomes 30 minutes, so we're going to remove. Okay. All right, Rainmaker sent this in yesterday on the new NNPC GMD. Not surprised, he's reading his handover notes templates. We are tired already. If you want to fix the refineries, just fix the refineries. Now, of course, Rainmaker also went into the fact that he's dissatisfied with the CBN's different intervention policies, where they want to give money to coppers. I think there's a new news brief saying the CBN wants to give money to, I think, poultry or something. So he says just stick with the monetary policy and do your jobs. Yeah? So Rainmaker, thank you for that message. But on the NNPC, Kayode and Ayo mentioned the fact that the headline from the Guardian, yes, that the NNPC is hinting that
increase in pump
price of fuel, and this is something we've been discussing here for forever. And I'm wondering what NNPC just decided that, oh well, one of the lowest have the lowest pump prices in Africa and it needs to go up. What are your thoughts?
I think we've all been saying it for a while, and I think it's been evident for so long. And I think maybe what makes it frustrating for the average Nigerian or even the businessman is inability, or is how for a while the rate stayed static, and then there's a big jump.
Right.
And considering that with inflation, you see steady increases. So I think for now, we've had inflation around 11%. So it's a different case if annually there's either 5, 6, 7 regular adjustment in petrol prices. You really don't see that shock as much as when you hold it up for 3, 4, 5 years, and then you increase it by 50, 60, 70% and see an overnight shock in inflation. Prices as a whole, price of food, transportation, all that goes up. So I think it's really more that whole disruptive approach in the price or in the price adjustments, I think makes things frustrating. Because if you recall, the last increase was by the former Minister of State when he was running the NNPC and moving it to 145, where we are right now. And if you think of where diesel prices are already, I think estimated landing cost is around $200. So you should already start seeing where petrol prices ideally should be, given where international prices are, freighting cost and all that. But I suppose it's how to an extent, I think one will see it as a bit as positive if you think of how much you spent on subsidies. I think the estimate is close to $1 trillion last year, at some point last year, and so I think that relieves the government. But I think what ideally we should have, I suppose NNPC should focus more on that, is having a proper template of how you continue to adjust petrol prices steadily annually, so you don't have a situation whereby government can't handle some element of subsidy. And I think maybe it also paves way for private players to come into that space. So someone like the Dangote refinery might see an easier way to operate if prices are a bit more deregulated.
Thank you for that, Muyiwa. If I mention Egypt now, people will get upset. But Egypt, they don't like mentioning Egypt because of the IMF. They gradually increased subsidies and so on. They gave people, enough warning and so on and so forth. I think Egypt's inflation now has dropped below 10%. Charles, I see your message. Charles is asking about the Trove app. Okay, so tomorrow is Tech Friday, Charles. We'll get into that. But real quick, Trove just allows you to buy stocks overseas, but we'll get into that tomorrow. But thank you for that message, Charles. Jay, I see your message. Kayode doesn't want to read it, but I see it. Don't worry.
Yes, we see your message.
Yes, Jay wants to become an activist. Okay, let's move to debts, Muyiwa. The Debt Management Office released Q1 2019. We saw our debt. I mean, this is another thing that we've been talking about forever, but I believe it looks like our debt increased. Debt stock rose by about 2.3% quarter on quarter. So we're now at 24.9 trillion, I believe, from 24.3. So our debt is increasing. Yes, the money we're owing continues to rise, and I think it's especially a problem for the states as well.
Yes, and I think that was the point I was making earlier on. That I think maybe the bigger issue for the states is, and I think it just shows that viability of these states. And I think if you start thinking about other areas as well for staff, so if you think about states that haven't paid part of their salaries. Most states we hear haven't been up to date on their pension contribution or obligations for staff as well. So I think by the time you throw in all these numbers, then it really shows the vulnerability of the state and viability as well, and how as states they have to figure out how to be a bit more innovative to address this debt problem, raise more revenues. I think on the federal level as well, that's a big problem. And I suppose maybe that's also why the NNPC is talking about raising petrol prices, because that reduces that pressure. If we spent over $1 trillion on subsidies last year, and borrowings as well was about $2 trillion, so just shows you how much of our debt pressure we could reduce by taking down subsidy.
Well, it is okay. Go ahead. Okay.
He said it was a bittersweet. It was bittersweet for Airtel. Yes, they were the biggest losers yesterday. On the flip side, they also displaced Nestle to become the third most capitalized stock on the floor of exchange.
Yes, indeed.
And Darlington says, "Good morning, all. NNPC's GMD's past and present wants to build a new refinery. When will we get serious? When we get serious as a country? For once, these statements are tiring."
Darlington, we're just as tired as you are. We're just as tired as you are. Okay, real quick. Thank you for your messages. We appreciate it. Okay, so by a minute here, we're running out of time. The Fitch came out to say that Nigeria, the CBN's mandating the banks to 60% loan deposit ratio. to force them to lend to the real sector? They're saying that, look, this might have some bad impact on the banks.
Yes, it does. And suppose the reality is that banks are in business to lend,
Right?
And they also have to manage risk as well. And in recent times, the reasons why banks haven't been lending is because the economy is weak. They're still struggling with bad loans. And so if you now more or less push them into lending, then you make them a bit more vulnerable, put them under pressure to be anxious, or to be less focused on their risk criteria as well, because they need to meet this obligation,
Right.
and because there's penalties as well for not
doing it.
meeting this. So it's so we're also in agreement that clearly it just makes life more difficult for banks. I suppose that's why if you look at valuations of banks as well, you continue to hear that they're cheap.
Right,
It looks
right.
like they'll be cheap for a long time because of these regulatory pressures that look like will continue.
Good stuff. Muyiwa Oni of Stanbic IBTC, the Regional Head, Equities Research, West Africa, Global Markets. Thank you for joining us today on Business Express. Real good to have you back in the studio. We missed you.
Thank you for
KB, right? Well, should we end with that? Good
Yes.
morning, guys. Modular refineries have sprung and coming online soon. Kudos to private investors. All right, and the NCDMB. Okay, well, it depends on how much they can produce and get us out of this quagmire that we're in. But KB, MI, Jay, Darlington, everybody out there, thank you so much for your messages. Tech Friday. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Good morning.
It's a smooth 98.5.
Thank you.
As